Hi, I'm Michelle Grant, and welcome to the Grateful Podcast. This is a place where we explore what it means to lead sustainable change and hear stories from women around the globe who are working to build more just and generative futures for our food systems and our world. And in this episode, I have three very special guests for you. They are part of the task team for something that I think is very cool called the Next Generation Leadership Collective. So you might have listened to an episode that I did in season 1 with Corinna Hawkes. And at the end of our chat, she hinted at some really interesting work that she was starting to do with a collective of women around defining the leadership that we need to transform our food systems. And that meant articulating not only what we need to do to create change, but also how we lead and who leads. And these discussions evolved into what's now called the Next Generation Leadership Collective, which launched early last year with a manifesto that outlined 8 courageous leadership practices that we need to engage with if we want to create a well-nourished world. And I was asked to make a contribution at the launch, sharing a personal leadership story linked to one of their 8 practices. And I really enjoyed the event, and I loved hearing all the other stories and insights from the participants that they had invited. And after that, kept participating in the dialogue forums that they ran over the course of last year, bringing together women working in food systems and nutrition around the world to talk about these leadership practices and how we can all build our capacity to engage with them. So I thought it would be great to get some of the members of the task force that guide this collective onto the podcast here to give you a chance to learn more about the Next Generation Leadership Collective and hopefully how it can help you in your work and life as well. So if you're wondering what this collective is, let me read you a description of it. The Next Generation Leadership Collective was established because food presents a huge opportunity to improve the health of people and the planet while also supporting the livelihoods of millions. We believe solutions to poor quality diets and inequitable, unsustainable food systems exist. What is missing is the bold and courageous leadership needed to put these solutions to work. We believe effecting real change towards a world where everyone eats well, underpinned by food systems that regenerate the planet and support equitable livelihoods, will take transformation in who leads and how they lead. Our purpose is therefore to create a leadership movement towards a well-nourished world. Our vision is courageous leadership practices in action at all levels for more impactful decision-making in nutrition and food systems. So as you can tell, there are tons of overlaps there with the things that we really care about here at The Grateful, the work that we're trying to do, the focus of the programs that we run, which is why it's been so nice to be in exchange with the women who are running the Next Generation Leadership Collective and to see how we can support each other with our work. So today I had the chance to chat with 3 of the 12-member task team who drive this initiative. Firstly, Corinna Hawkes, who has been on the podcast before, so definitely go back and listen to that earlier episode. And she has over 20 years experience working in food systems for various UN agencies, governments, universities, and NGOs. And most recently, she was a professor and director of the Centre for Food Policy at City University of London from 2016 until last month, actually, when she became the director of food systems and food safety at the UN Food and Agriculture Organization based in Rome. Corinna is one of the co-founders of the Next Generation Leadership Collective. She's originally from the UK, but now based in Italy. Our next guest is Xu Wenying, and she's a health economist and public health nutrition researcher who focuses on chronic disease and obesity prevention, and her work really takes a strong inter- and multidisciplinary lens. She's currently a professor of nutrition at the Gilling School of Public Health, and she helped co-found the Next Generation Leadership Collective. Xu Wen is originally from Singapore, but she's now based in the US. Our third guest is Rebecca Namara, and she's a public health nutritionist who has a really strong interest in using evidence-based and innovative approaches to solve health and nutrition challenges, and in particular working among vulnerable populations in resource-limited settings. She currently works with the Next Generation Leadership Collective as the project coordinator, and she's originally from Uganda but now based in the US. So I really enjoyed my chat with Corinna, Shuwen, and Rebecca about how their own personal and professional journey led them to start this collective. We chatted about the 8 different practices that they outline in their manifesto, and they share insights and stories of how they're actually living into those practices in their own leadership. We talk about why they chose the descriptor courageous for the type of leadership they want to see in the world, and what their dream and vision is for where this collective will go in the future. I hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did, and that the insights support you on your leadership journey. When I was reading through the manifesto, I think the first page really struck me because there's a couple of sentences there that resonated with me a lot, where you say, transforming food systems requires transforming leadership. This means transforming how we lead and who leads. And this sentence is a massive driver of a lot of the work that I do now. So I would love to hear from each of you what about your own personal and professional path led you to this statement, led you to really feel like transforming leadership is key to the work that we're doing.
I'm happy to go first. I think for me, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I actually think that we know what needs to be tried or should be implemented more widely at a larger scale, but it's just not happening. And that is very frustrating to me. And led also to the realization that the reason it isn't happening is because there's a lack of leadership, or the leadership that values and sees solutions that we already actually have, or pathways towards solution, and are not using them, and are not choosing to use them, or choosing to work with people to figure out how to use them. And so that's, for me, a major piece of the issues. And it's a global issue. It's going to require people working together from across countries and sectors, but it hasn't really happened. And so for me, that's why focusing on the leadership piece and transforming the leadership piece is so critical from my perspective.
And Shuwen, was there a specific moment when you realized that that's so important to you, or was there a particular event somewhere in your career path that you felt was really kind of a watershed moment in that respect?
Yeah, I think there wasn't really a watershed moment, but there were enough little moments, I guess, that collectively resonated with me. And I felt like I always ended up with the same question. Why aren't people just acting on things that we know could work, or at least try them, And I do a lot of food policy work in several countries, and the problems and the issues that people are talking about are the same everywhere. And it's just recognizing that you're all facing the same issues. We need to figure out how to do this together. And the fact that at the subnational level to the national level, that's not happening. And then from the national to the global level, that's also not happening, has been just frustrating. And I see the frustration among the collaborators I work with as well.
So I can echo that. I mean, this was a couple of things for me. What Shuwen has just said is the same, that after many years of working in nutrition and food system space, of just seeing that the evidence that was emerging, the possibility, the opportunities for change, and then observing why change wasn't happening, and seeing that it was about the nature of decision making, about the fact that people tended to stand up and say, I'm right and you're wrong. And then you'd start an argument, or a polite argument, or maybe not such a polite argument. And it was almost like people were very righteous about the ways forward. And it's great that people have that belief. It's great that people have that passion. But it kind of meant that you weren't able to kind of get past that, and that the ability to come up with a solution that was workable and effective but also was feasible in the context of the reality that people do have different perspectives. Things just weren't moving forward. So I saw too much binary thinking. And so I was thinking, how can you get over this kind of thinking? Some people will say it's good that you have that and it's a politics that you just have to fight. But in my observation, that mentality wasn't working. And so what kind of leadership do you need to actually work yourself through that? And sometimes that involves a judgment to really fight and to engage in conflict. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. But it has to be thought through that that is the right thing to do rather than I'm just going to stand up and say I'm right and fight. So it was observing that in particular. And this is where the gender element comes in for me too, in my own personal leadership journey, of observing leaders who were often, but absolutely not always men. Really don't want to say that at all. But because of the leadership structures being dominated by men, which is a reality, it was often men who stood up, were charismatic, appeared to be tremendously courageous, saying all of these wonderful things. But I felt bombastic and didn't really get us to where we needed to be. And seeing more junior women, and particularly in mid-career, having brilliant ideas and really a much more skillful approach to managing these things, who lacked confidence to take that approach. So Shuwen and I talked at the beginning a lot about that the leadership is latent. It's there waiting to be unleashed. And that's why we thought the focus on women is important. And that's part of our personal experience or professional experience as well. Even though this initiative is not just, it is led by women, but it isn't just for women. It's not just about women. And it's not just about how many women are in leadership positions, but it was that aspect of my own experience, which was also very important.
I'd like to add on that. I mean, when you read the statement, the transforming food systems requires transforming leadership. I think as an early career person, from my perspective, it's easy to think that leadership only happens in much bigger systems. And it's easy for me to think that in the smaller systems that I may be working in as an early career person, that leadership, like transformation, may not happen in the way it would happen in bigger systems. But I've come to think that even with the smaller systems, that's where it gives the most significant picture of what leadership, a transformation in leadership can do. Like, for example, think of a family as a system, or think of a school as a system, or think of any small community as a system. And within those systems, there's so many brilliant ideas. There's so many creative innovations. And we know that it's these smaller systems that ultimately make up the bigger systems. I tend to look at the transformation happening in a hierarchical or a spiral manner, which builds into what I hear Shuwen and Corinna speaking to in the much bigger systems.
Thank you, Rebecca. That reminds me a lot of this concept of emergent strategy from Adrienne Marie Brown, which really speaks to this idea of small is beautiful, small is all, and it's from there that things ripple out. So I think that's a beautiful perspective. Thank you. So your Courageous Leadership Manifesto contains 8 practices. I really love how you framed them and how you've structured them. You can tell that a lot of care and attention went into this process. And I would love for you to share what these practices are with us so that everybody listening can learn about them and think about how they might be showing up in their work and life. And perhaps you could bring each of the practices to life with some examples or insights from your time playing with these concepts in your own work.
I can kick us off on the first one. The first one is prioritize social purpose. And at the time when we were drafting the manifesto, I was really struggling in my university role for a range of different reasons. I was trying to build up the centre that I direct, the Centre for Food Policy, and it was quite a tough challenge and had lots and lots of things to manage. And I had a whole load of things I was trying to do. And I realized that I was trying to actually listen to everybody and please everybody. And that was actually making me forget and lose the social purpose of the centre and the things that I held very dear in the work that we were trying to do there and push forward. And I began to feel very disillusioned in what I was doing and very frustrated, distracted and almost kind of irritated. And it was only when I realized that one of my values, which was listening, was clashing up against another value, which was prioritizing social purpose. And through that experience, and this manifesto reflects all of our experiences, I'm just sharing my own, is I think one of the reasons why we put it first. That actually that is something that if you lose sight of that, everything disappears and you wonder why you're doing things and boundaries get broken. And it was only when I thought, hang on a minute, I'm losing the purpose of the Centre for Food Policy here. I'm losing it. I'm going to get it right back. That's when things got back on track. I share that experience because I was going through that at the same time as drafting the manifesto with colleagues. And I think we're all going through those kinds of experiences. And what we were trying to do with these courageous leadership practices is not be afraid of bringing our own experience into it, recognizing, as we say right at the start of the manifesto, that I'm reading it out here, we recognize and value that people have diverse experiences and are often situated in different contexts than our own, but nevertheless, our own experience mattered. So I wanted to share that about the first leadership practice in particular, but I think it applies to all of them.
I could speak to the second courageous leadership practice, which is persistent by learning and adapting. I've seen this very clearly evident through my journey working with this collective and with the team as well. And it's something that came to my realization after taking on tasks or challenges that I never would have thought that I would have done. I thought whatever anyone did, they have to have some kind of experience. They had to have some kind of skills to lead, and probably you've gone to school or gone through some kind of training to be able to do something. But the collective or the work that I've done through this collective has really shown me that even if I have not been to school for a specific skill, but in some way I have had the opportunity to be introduced to it, and I orient myself with either the information or get to speak to the people that are doing something and persist in this activity or skill, I can be able to do it. And a great example would be, I used to open my computer and look at web pages and websites and imagine how people come up with that. And I never would have imagined that at any one point I could sit down and build a website. I didn't have any skills in building websites or designing websites. But I remember having a meeting with Shuwen and Corina, and we were like, okay, how do we make known to people out there that there's a collective here and this is what we stand for and this is what we're doing? And I remember suggesting and saying, okay, I'm going to do this. And I hadn't done any background work. I hadn't even looked up at anything that people do to come up with the websites. But there's something in me that kind of told me that I think you can do it if you reach out to people and find out how this is all done. I remember thinking to myself, what did I just get myself into? But it took the persistence, and it may have taken me a journey. And we know that the learning journey is never straight. And we know that the learning journey is not instant, that you get in and you get something and it's done. But it took persistence. It took learning not only from what is already out there, but from people who are doing this stuff. It took learning from listening to feedback from Shuwen and Corinne and other members on the team. And I can say that I'm really proud in the end that it may not be perfect, but it is good enough. And I know that there's room for improvement, which requires me to actually continue learning from the process. So I think it speaks to the work that goes on in nutrition and food systems, testing out the approaches and the innovations that are out there. And even if you get the wrong feedback or the wrong outcomes, it doesn't mean that that's the end of it. You have to get back up. You have to keep learning. You have to keep seeking new ideas. You have to keep seeking new knowledge from people who are doing so many wonderful things out there.
Yeah, I think learning what's good enough is like a central lesson all humans need to learn. Thanks, Rebecca. Who wants to take the next one? The third one.
So deviate from the norm. This is clearly critically important because we won't get change unless we deviate from the norm, because that's what change is. And that's why it's so central. But it's a hard thing to do, and there's so many disincentives to doing it. And one of the critical points that we make in the manifesto is this importance of tackling power hierarchies and redressing power imbalances. And deviating from the norm, as well as the next one, lifting others up, are really important as a way of understanding how to help redress some of these power imbalances that we see in the system. And certainly in my professional experience, I have always tried in my intellectual work to push forward and deviate from what is understood. And that is, I think, the role of what it is to be in an intellectual setting. It's part of the job to do that. And that has brought a whole host of challenges. But one of the ways that I've dealt with that is through actually one of the other ones, which is speaking openly and authentically. And I have to say, it's the most fun. And I have learned to really enjoy it. I say that as I can do that because I'm in a privileged position to do that. I really want to be clear that I'm in that privileged position. It's very different for people in other positions. But as soon as I was able and put in that position, I used my voice in the most authentic way possible to communicate something which was a bit, I felt anyway, was trying to kind of push things in a way that would change mindsets, which is something which is really important to do. And I have to say, it's been the most fun part of my career, I would say, trying to do that. And I went from somebody, I remember at my own wedding almost 25 years ago, I didn't even give a speech. And now I love public speaking. And as I said, I use it to put out difficult ideas and to try and use an authentic voice to communicate them. So that's one of the reasons why deviating from the norm is so powerful, because it tries to address some of the power imbalances and putting new ideas out there, but it also can be tremendous fun.
And you also covered two of the practices there. Well done.
Very well done.
Thanks, Karuna. Shuwen, do you want to take the next one, lifting others up?
Yes, yeah, sure. So, I mean, I think what Karuna has said made me also think about a few other things as well, like with regards to deviating from the norm. I think what she was really trying to say is it's about pushing the boundaries towards that social purpose, that larger social purpose as well, right? And it's not as if we want to deviate from the norm for the sake of deviating from the norm. And so that purpose is still also very key. As you can tell from this conversation, these leadership practices are very integrated with each other. And both in terms of one can support another and reinforce another leadership practice, but also in terms of sometimes there can be some tensions across them. And part of what we're hoping to do as a whole across these leadership practices is to gain some awareness, each person trying to apply some of these practices, to gain some awareness around them and start learning for themselves how to navigate them in different contexts and situations. But coming back to this fourth leadership practice about lifting others up, I think it's something that I value a lot, but I will also admit I also sometimes struggle with it, because there are definitely moments where I'm happy for some success that a trainee of mine might have had, or new opportunities that they may have. But at the same time, there is this little piece of me that's also a bit jealous, and I'm thinking, well, I didn't have these kinds of opportunities or this type of mentorship when I was, at your level, and so I'll admit that there are definitely also times when I catch myself, that little piece of me that's feeling that way, and remind myself. But I value this practice of giving them this opportunity or opening this door for them in some way. And precisely because I didn't have this opportunity during my time, that we need to change this, and we need to be creating the opportunities now for other people. So that's just one of the other practices that I really do value. And I think it's very important for all of us, no matter actually what our career stage is. And they can be smaller, ways of lifting others up. It can be just celebrating people's success, which is actually a way of lifting people up, creating opportunities, introducing people and making connections, across introducing people to new opportunities or new networks that they may not otherwise have ways to access. And those are all ways to lift others up across the career stage. So yeah, so that's my plug.
Okay, so we are at number 5, which is listen with curiosity. Who would like to share on that? And feel free to combine any, like you said, there's a lot of overlaps.
I would like to speak to listening with curiosity as one of the practices that I actually find I have a challenge with. I think from my own perspective, like we grow up in different contexts and we have our own set ways that are impacted by culture, by the environment we grow in and the upbringing and the different learning styles that we go through if we've gone through school of some sort. And I find that as I listen to people, I often catch myself only trying to pick out what appeals to me or what I think aligns with my values. And in some way, I feel that that blocks out new ideas that could actually be very important or something, it may be something that someone has to say that could really be powerful for consideration, because the problems and challenges we are trying to address in nutrition and food systems or in any other system are not individual problems. They're not problems that apply to Rebecca only. These are challenges that apply to groups of people, that apply to countries, they apply to regions. And if we're only listening for what appeals to Rebecca or what appeals to people that may only share my values, then I think we would be missing something. So I'd like to say that that is one that I'm actually focusing on, and being open-minded is one thing that I'm actually practicing. I know it really takes time to build this practice and to not have more to speak, but actually take a step back and listen to what people have to say and listen to the different voices that are out there. I would think as a leader in any capacity, as an emerging leader, whether in your early career or you're in mid-career or you've already attained that position as a leader, you have the opportunity to speak more than anyone. But what are you doing to create that platform to let other people speak and have the opportunity to listen, or give an opportunity for other people to listen to what the various voices out there have to say? And I think this practice kind of goes along with reflecting individually and collectively. So at the end of the day, it's taking a step back and, well, if I've been in 3 or 4 meetings, which is a rare occasion, but whenever it happens, I usually take a step back and reflect on if I've been able to listen with curiosity. Is there anything that I could be missing? Or am I really sticking to my own ways that probably may not work for a specific situation that I may be trying to address? So I'm really trying to be open-minded. And I think we need this. We need this in nutrition and food systems. We need voices to be heard and be considered and not just shut out because maybe we're different. So those are the 2 practices that I feel like speak to my growing journey right now.
And how wonderful that you're putting an emphasis on practicing them also early in your career, because I think that's the risk, right? If we don't start these practices early, it actually gets harder the more entrenched we get in our work and our expertise. So I think it's, really beautiful that you're cultivating this early, and hope that it could be better integrated into our education systems as well. So it's just second nature to how we work and interact, not something that we have to actively integrate later in our career. So the next one is connect with others for collective action. Would anybody like to share something on that?
If I could jump in on this one. When the Next Generation Leadership Group met recently, we all said which of the practices we were going to hold ourselves accountable, hold each other accountable for taking forward in the next year. And this was the one that I chose, connect with others for collective action. And the reason is because I have really struggled with this over the years. And when I look at the past, and I have to say, I used to have pretty much 0 leadership skills. I was really not very good at all. That's not quite true to say 0, but I mean, I really didn't have a clue what I was doing in the past. I really had to learn. And that's one of the reasons, again, for wanting to do this initiative, because I had to learn. You're not just, care about leadership and I know what I'm doing. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I wished I'd had more in a way to support me. But one of the things I really didn't do is to connect with others it was this kind of, I'm alone, I was kind of going into battle alone as if I had all the answers. I remember some years ago now, I chaired a WHO, World Health Organization expert committee, and was really proud that we got this document written. It was the WHO recommendations on marketing to kids. We got it through. It was adopted by the World Health Assembly. It all seemed to be a real sign of success. I was very proud of the team. It was a really good example of getting something adopted. But basically, they've really failed. I mean, they were part of a step on a journey in the sense that not many governments really have adopted really, really good actions on marketing to kids. And I've reflected on this a lot, and I realized that I was so busy trying to get this document passed and trying to do the right thing as an individual that didn't think about the coalition building about this and didn't think about the allies that were needed to really take this forward. It was all terribly clever, actually, if I look back on it. It was the first time I'd really led something like that. So I can forgive myself a bit for not having done all of it. But again, it wasn't up to me to do all of it. It was about connecting with others. That's just one of many examples in my career where I just haven't done it. And so now in the much more advanced stages of my career, I am saying, no, this is going to be a very important way forward. And the thing that I'm going forward with is to connect with others for allyship, to build platforms, to make sure that I have safe spaces in which to work. So I'm really excited about that. And I have to say, there's nothing that's been more pleasurable in the last few years than working on this initiative, precisely because it has involved connecting with others for collective action.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that is, again, our entire education system also focuses on this kind of myth of the heroic leader, the lone person going at it, like you said, the clever aspect of the what that we're working on, but never looks at the how, and especially how to effectively collaborate, which actually requires a lot of compassion. It really requires a lot of compassion to understand others, where they're coming from. So it's definitely one of the tricky practices to bring to life, but I think it's critical that you've got it in there. And looking at all of these practices, you can see very quickly how they require courage to engage with them, to put them into practice. And you've called this practices for courageous leadership. And firstly, I was impressed that you could land on a single descriptor, because I'm constantly trying to work out how to describe the type of leadership that I support and train and want to foster. And I use all kinds of words: participatory, intentional, conscious, creative, inclusive, generative, integrated, sustainable. It just goes on and on and on. So I would love to hear, how did you land on courageous, and what is it about this one word that you felt was central for the work that you're trying to do?
I mean, I think Corinna and I did that whole exercise you mentioned. We talked specifically about, compassion, empathy, and like courageous and other ones that you mentioned. And I think in the end, we landed on courageous because we recognized that what we were trying to do was scary and difficult for a lot of people, and ourselves included, right? And that it required courage to sort of take it on because it was scary and difficult. So we felt that that was the most appropriate adjective to use in the end.
I can't exactly remember the point in which the word popped up, but certainly it's just to echo what Shu-Wen was saying. It's because applying these leadership practices is not easy. There is an unfortunate binary that's out there in the leadership literature world of soft skills and hard skills. And what we have been talking about are sort of called soft skills. I'm like, these are not soft at all. These are much harder than the hard skills. These are the things that are really hard, not because it's a confidence matter or whatever, but because structurally, as you just implied, Michelle, there is disincentives to practicing these practices. And the spaces are often not there that make these practices easy. For example, time. They take time. We're all short of time. In other words, you can't do them alone. So that means you have to connect with others. And secondly, they really are about coming up against these imperatives out there which disincentivize them, and particularly the power hierarchies and the power imbalances, which means that if you use these practices, you might be seen as weak. And so that implies, you really need to be courageous to figure out how to navigate that. And as I said, you can't do it on your own. And as a leadership initiative, we're very clear that there are lots of things that we can do on our own, but our initiative is really about working collectively, because we feel that's absolutely essential in order to break down these barriers and to have the collective courage. At the end of the document, we put, we need collective courage to strategically call out and address these challenges. So that's really the value add, if you like, that we're trying to bring. It's one of the many initiatives out there, and there are many brilliant ones, including the work you do, Michelle, but that's where we're trying to focus.
Yeah, I would like to add on that. I think the word courage, actually, when we look at it through the lens of the change that we're calling for, the transformation in leadership for nutrition and food systems, you are looking at taking risks. And it takes courage to take risks to create this change, because you're trying out unfamiliar ideas that you haven't explored before. And I think it's easy to think courage is without fear, but there is fear. But the fact that you're overcoming that fear to take this risk, I think it takes courage. And if you look at, just like Corinna's mentioned, all the practices to really put yourself out there to listen to someone that has different values, I think that's courage.
I think a lot of it reminds me of when Brené Brown talks about armored leadership. And a lot of it does ask you to take the armor off, right? And to move from these kind of egoic ways of being and relating, and to be much, much more authentic and open and honest. And all of that is frightening. It means getting rid of the armor that we tend to code ourselves in to protect ourselves, these kind of defensive behaviors.
Yeah. And, I think so much of what we're also trying to do is to build on the strengths that we think many of us, many women in particular, already have, and sort of the skill sets we have and the traits that we have, and how we actually many of us already are practicing these leadership practices. And these are strengths, even though because of our society, often viewed as weakness. And I think that's the other piece that we're trying to be subversive as well, and really call it out and flip it on its head and reframe how it's viewed, how these practices and behaviors are viewed.
Great. So I think I'd love to chat as we wrap up about your vision for this collective. You've done the hard work of bringing it together, getting the momentum. Where do you hope it goes?
I don't have a time reference, I guess, for this vision, but I actually want it to be bigger than the collective, and I don't want it to be viewed as an entity. I want it to become a movement, and that it doesn't belong to any one person or group, and it is just happening.
I'd like to see a mindset shift as a result, again, in a more diffuse way. It's very ambitious, I realise, but the idea that people who are in leadership positions and in a senior leadership positions said, yes, this is the best way of making decisions and moving things forward. And they maybe can't credit it to our manifesto or anything like that, but somehow it's diffused out there that it becomes a norm. That's going to take a lot of time. And for younger people in their career, I just really want them to move forward and do their stuff. And I would just love to see, I would feel so gratified if the work that we're doing manages to reach just enough women, 200, 300, 400, 500, who feel that it's given them just the extra thing that they needed to go and be the brilliant leader that they already are. That would be wonderful.
And I would like to add to what Corinna just mentioned. She just picked something that I was thinking about. And I would love this collective to be a place where any woman can go and experience a boost. And the word boost was clicking in my mind. I feel being a part of this collective has been a boost for me. And many times when I find myself wondering if I can do something, or if there's anyone even out there that can help me, I have found the collective as a source of that boost that I need to move forward. And speaking as an early career, I think I would love for any early career or mid-career, even senior career people to find this as a platform where they can receive that extra boost to move forward, to take that courage and make the change that needs to happen.
And if I can add something else about the vision for this initiative, we really all want to see change in nutrition and food systems. And so when we're talking about receiving a boost, younger leaders kind of gaining power in moving forwards, and the mindset shifts and the and the shifts that we want to see, the ultimate purpose of it is that we actually see some change. And so the idea is that this change in leadership, while it's important in and of itself, is really important because it leads to change. All of us are incredibly motivated by the fact that things are not great. And there are many people who are struggling because of nutritional problems and problems in food systems. It goes without saying, especially in this time of crisis that we're living in now. So I really should add that I guess the ultimate hope is that it plays its role in the work that many other wonderful people are doing in trying to really make some change in nutrition and food systems.
So it sounds amazing, an initiative that's becoming a movement that's really going to create some change. Anyone who's listening who feels inspired, is looking for that boost that Rebecca was talking about, how can they get involved?
So we currently have a website, the Next Generation Leadership Collective, to see what the vision and the mission this collective is. And I'd love to say that there's very exciting information of the work that we've already done. The one that really makes me very proud of the spotlight dialogues through the forums that you can listen in on the website under the forum section. That's one way you can really learn more about this collective.
I'll pop that link in the show notes so that people can just click directly on it. Any other messages you want to share about how to get involved?
Yeah, we are also in the process of coming up with some new activities that we hope we can start launching into this new year in 2023. A lot of it's going to be informed by feedback that we've collected already, and hopefully more feedback that we'll be receiving from doing a set of pilot pods that we'll be experimenting with over the next several months. And so much of our whole process in terms of this collective has been about just learning along the way and adapting. So applying our own leadership practices into our activities and adjusting depending on what we're hearing from people who are engaged in the activities and honing the resources. I think the other piece that we are really hoping to do more of this year is to extend our own networks as a collective with other initiatives out there. They're doing really great work, and people out there like you, Michelle, to really understand how we can support their efforts as well. How can we bring value add to what they're trying to do, as well as bring value add to what we're trying to do, and find those win-wins along the way. So those are just some of the additional things, I think, in the next year or so that we'll try to really build up more.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that we really want to hear from people, and we're very open. Our aim is to embrace diversity of people. The collective itself is made up of women, but we will be working forward to figure out about how that's going to evolve. If anybody has just got curious about anything, then there is an email on the website as well that you can get in touch.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Grateful Podcast. If hearing about these leadership principles today has got you reflecting on your own leadership journey, I just wanted to let you know that applications are now open for the next round of Lead the Change. Lead the Change is a 6-month facilitator and leadership training program that we run here at The Grateful, specifically for women working in food systems or sustainability more broadly. It's an amazing chance to learn together in a community of 20 women from around the world what leading yourself, leading others, and leading change can look like for you. Our aim in the program is to really help you connect to the inner calm, the community, and the courage that you need to become a more fulfilled, inclusive, and impactful leader. If you'd love to learn more, just head to thegrateful.com/leadthechange, or scroll down and you can find that link in the show notes. You can always reach out to me with any questions that you have, or feel free to skip back to the last episode of the podcast where I had a chat with some past participants of Lead the Change to hear all about how the experience was for them in the program and what sort of impact it's had in their work and lives. Thanks so much for joining today. Looking forward to have you with us in the next episode.